So one of the more controversial issues and topics that's been going around here on the internet that everybody's been, basically talking about and literally just eviscerating with their disdain and hatred is the Velma show. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't watched the Velma show yet. But from what I've seen and heard, not everybody, if not I wouldn't say not everybody, but I'd say basically the entire internet hates this show. They do. And some of them would say it's for good reason. One, basically, it doesn't have Scooby in it. Two, it basically is a show that, is just taking, cheap shots at everything we've, been critical about, when it comes to certain franchises changing up. Like changing of characters, taking cheap shots at us talking about how bad Me Too is, or the SJWs, cancel culture, all that. They also don't like the fact of how the characters are represented. Or even how the characters, approach each other in the show. In fact, there's one scene that's been getting a lot of talk lately because of the fact that it was showcased in Velma. And that was this show's interpretation of Daphne kissing Velma on the lips outside of Velma's house. Thus indicating that, Velma and Daphne are not just lesbians, but they're more than likely probably bi, if you will. But that's not the only reason. A lot of people look at this as Mindy Kaling, who's behind the series and who voices Velma, as being, her own way of pushing her own agenda, like her own support of the woke movement, of cancel culture, SJWs, and all that. But again, it's more than just that. It's more than just that. It's the fact that, it's a show that, a lot of people feel isn't a true representation of what the Scooby-Doo franchise is. I mean, I've been a fan of Scooby-Doo since I was a kid. You all know that. I think a lot of us have been. And like you, I've seen a lot of Scooby-Doo content. Mostly all good, some bad. And believe me, when I've seen my share of bad, I've let it be known. I mean, for example, I never liked the idea of Scooby-Doo and Shaggy Get a Clue. I don't know what drugs people were on when they came up with that. Nor do I know what drugs they were on when they did Be Cool Scooby-Doo. I mean, yes, both shows had, some good moments, but it's like, what was this all about? It didn't make any sense, But then, that's not the only criticization myself and others have given the Scooby-Doo franchise. We've also looked at the movies. The movies, the direct-to-video films that is, in recent years have done things that not all of us agree upon. Like with the Curse of the 13 Ghosts and Return to Zombie Island. A lot of us looked at those two movies like, what the hell are you thinking? What are you doing? Why would you, present these movies that are supposed to be follow-ups to previous Scooby-Doo incarnations of shows and movies? Why would you present them the way you did? Like with 13 Ghosts, we're all hoping, oh good, we're going to get a follow-up to this great show, this cult classic show. And what we end up getting is just the fact that it was all, hubba-baloo, another man in a mask deal. But the one positive a lot of us fans would agree upon, despite our criticism of that, is it does seem like they left the door open for our own interpretation. But when it came to Return to Zombie Island, that was a different story in itself, especially from the characters, the Mystery Inc. gang, who were there experiencing the events of the original. So it's like, what is going on? Why would you do this? Thank goodness the saving grace was the Halloween movie that followed, and even the Sword in the Stone-like movie that followed. So those are the saving graces. And then Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo that just came out is another saving grace. So in the past year or two, at least they've been getting back on track. That's the positive. The negative basically comes from this. The only positive Scooby-Doo show that's, debuted recently is Scooby-Doo and Guess Who. But here, the Velma show, basically it's something that fans would want to take into the local dumpster area, drop it in there, dump gallons and gallons of gasoline on it, set it ablaze, wait till it burns to a fine crisp, if you will, then extinguish it into extinction. That's how they feel about it. all because of what they feel and see it represents. And this to me is just an example of you do not let, and I'm saying this honestly, you do not let celebrities of any kind, whether they've been fans of the show or the franchise I should say, or not, you do not let them get behind the director's show or producer's chair, when it comes to this. Because what they'll do is they'll basically want to make it into their own personal project. And like I said, that's how people view the Velma show right now, thanks to Mindy Kaling. They view it as her own way of addressing all these different agendas and just going from there. Basically taking pot shots and cheap shots no matter where they could be. Turning characters into drug lords because of the family's history. Basically making someone that was always just joked about as being high on drugs and weed, not only into a different race, and I say that with all due respect, no offense, but into said person that loves drugs and weed. I mean, these are just things that people are basically saying are not right about this show. But what's funny is this might have been exactly what WB, HBOMax, and by extension Mindy Kaling were hoping for. Because here's what happened, and this is what really shocked a lot of people. And maybe they feel that if they petition and protest enough, it won't happen. But here's what shocked a lot of people. Velma, despite getting, thousands and thousands of, thumbs down on the trailer, on the trailer that preceded the show's debut, and very few thumbs up, Velma basically, is getting, a second season. Yeah, she's getting a second season. And whether or not it does officially happen or not, it has been greenlit. And all because of the reaction, the show has been getting. And like I said, maybe that's what HBOMax, WB, and Mindy Kaling were banking on. They knew, basically, the way the show was being presented, that it was probably going to get a reaction, a negative kind, but it would be enough of a, evidence and proof of, hey, at least people are talking about the show, let's give it another season. And that's what's happening. But again, despite the fact that I've not seen the show yet, based on what everybody's been saying, this is a show that is a prime example of not allowing a celebrity that's part of this SJW woke cancel culture movement, Me Too movement, if you will, as well, to get behind the director's chair of a show like this because they will use it for their own agenda. So, yes, is Velma right now, in a majority of a lot of people's eyes, an example of not only, celebrities or directors or producers or whatever who are part of certain, mindsets, using the show and using characters to push those agendas that they support, isn't it a prime example of not allowing that to happen? Yes. Has it gone on record in probably the quickest fashion to, being the worst Scooby-Doo show ever, even without Scooby? Because that's what it doesn't have. That's another criticism, like I said at the beginning, people look at. It's a Scooby-Doo show that doesn't have Scooby. And speaking of Scooby, one of the more recent reports that's come out is we're going to see Scooby, but it's going to be Scooby with an I, and it's going to be a new female love interest for Shaggy. It's like, a lot of people see this and they're like, as if this show couldn't be more insulting to the fan bases, as it is now. If they pull this off, then what's next? What else are they capable of? And that's, again, another prime example of not letting someone that of a celebrity status or who's part of any of these cultures, whether you support them or you don't, get behind the wheel of something like this and just drive forward. Because they will drive forward with their own agenda in mind. They will. And like I said, out of all the bad Scooby-Doo content we've gotten throughout its history, this right now sounds like it tops the list as the worst. I mean, everybody that's given it a shot has all come out of it feeling the same way. But, again, what if this was all part of the master plan? What if this was all part of what Mindy Kaling, HBOMax, and WB were hoping for? So that way, when they do the second season, all of a sudden the second season is the complete opposite of what this was. What if that's the agenda? What if that was the agenda, the plan in the first place? Then if it was, hey, more power to them. Congratulations. You pulled the wool over everybody's eyes. Because if the second season turns out to be more like what we expect a Scooby-Doo show to be, then it's like, why even put us through this? What, was it a test run to see how we would react? Who knows? But the point is, when it comes to Velma, no matter how you view it, whether you've seen it or not, and I'm one of those people that have yet to see it, but when you look at the reaction it's got, again, it's a show that probably potentially had, a lot of good going for it, on paper. But the moment that plan, those paper plans got executed, that's when it fell apart. It's like the blueprints looked good, but the execution was bad. Because the person behind the execution, the person that put those blueprints together, is someone that supports certain, outsets and mindsets that are currently flooding, the media as we speak. So yeah, Velma, again, I can't judge it too much because I haven't seen it. But yeah, I'll just put it this way. Mindy Kaling, I don't know if you'll watch videos like this to see how people feel. But if I was you, and I'm getting ready to do this second season, I go back and look at what I did here, and I rectify it. Or I come out on YouTube or on social media, announce the second season's coming, and then basically giggle a little bit and say, oh, by the way, that first season, that's going to be non-canon because got ya. That's all. If I'm you, just say you got us by saying that's not going to be non-canon and that this new season is going to be the actual show it should have been in the first place. That's the only way, Mindy, I see you saving, having any saving grace. I really do. But yeah, Velma here is a prime example that if people are not behind it in the, at the start, if they're not behind it at the start based on the synopsis, the teaser, and the full trailers, that, come before it, if this show is to teach any kind of lesson, despite getting a second season and by the way, we don't know if that second season will actually happen or not. It might get pulled before we know it. But this is a prime example, in my opinion, once again, of, as I said, one, do not let any person, celebrity, producer, whatever, who's part of certain groups, culture groups, whatever, get behind a show like this because they're just going to fill it with their own agendas. Kind of use it as, a way to promote their own agendas, their own support of certain things, and also poke fun at those that are against it and whatever. But it's also a prime example that if people are, eviscerating this from the start, from the synopsis, the teaser trailer, and the full trailer, basically it is an example that if they are eviscerating it at that time already and the show hasn't even debuted, do not make the show a reality. Shelve it indefinitely or take your time, make an announcement that you've listened to how the fans feel and you're going to go rework it. That's what you do. You either shelve it indefinitely, say, because of fan reaction, we're not going to do this, or you say, because of fan reaction, we're going to push back the release date for another year or so, and we're going to rework the show into what fans expect a Scooby-Doo related show to be. That's the lesson that needs to be learned here. Either shelve the show indefinitely because of the reaction that you are negatively getting on all fronts, or you make the announcement you're pushing it back and you're going to rework it to be the show fans expect a Scooby-Doo related show to be. But yeah, right now, like I said, Velma is at that point that it's looked at as probably the worst Scooby-Doo show ever made in history, as well as the worst Scooby-Doo content ever made in history, both movies and show combined. And it's also looked at as the kind of show that, as I mentioned earlier, fans would rather take to a dumpster fire, dump it inside, dumpster, field, landfill, if you will, dump it inside, pour gallons of gasoline on it, set it ablaze, let it burn for like 20, 30 minutes, then basically extinguish it to extinction. That's how they feel about it. But we'll have to see what happens if the second season occurs. Yes, it's been greenlit, but it doesn't mean it's confirmation that it will fully become a reality. We'll have to see. But what are your thoughts on this whole controversy with Velma? The Velma show, I should say. What did you think about it if you saw it? Do you agree with everybody's outset on it? And do you think that this is a lesson that they should have just either shelved it indefinitely or pushed back the release date to rework it to be the show people expect a Scooby-Doo related show to be? What are your thoughts? Comment below, live chat during the premiere, like the video. Oh, also support me at Venmo at Brian-Warmer-2, Cash App at BWRoses98. Also check out the Teespring store for content you can't get anywhere else. Also, you will get an audio version of this on my BW Roses Discussion podcast. You can find it all your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora. Also, check me out at DeviantArt.com at BVW1979 as well. But guys, give me your thoughts overall. How do you feel about this, whole situation with Velma? Are you one of those that are critical about it and feel that this shouldn't have, gotten off the ground in the first place? Or do you think maybe people making a big ado about nothing? Let me know down below and in the live chat. And I'm out.